Hello and welcome back to the Argyle HR Leadership Forum, Tech Check 2022. My name is Michael with Argyle. A couple of notes before I turn things over to our speaker. First, a quick reminder to stop by our sponsors' virtual booths at any time during today's event and for the following week. Our partners are committed to providing you with valuable content and a great overall experience. At any time during today's event, you can visit their virtual booths from the main agenda page, which include complimentary materials, information, and meet and greet opportunities. To ask questions throughout the session, simply type into the Q&A chat and we will address your questions at the end of the session. And now, without further delay, I'd like to introduce our speaker, Octavio Hernandez, Senior Manager, Product Marketing with Globalization Partners. We're excited to have Octavio for his thought leadership presentation titled HR and AI-Powered Analytics, Leveraging the Power of AI to Enable High-Performance Cultures. Octavio, thank you so much for being here. Welcome, and over to you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you very much for the introduction, and thanks for the opportunity to be here today to talk about this topic that is certainly hot and very interesting for all of us in this industry. So I'm just going to start. Obviously, you already made the introduction, but just very briefly to give you a little bit of background about myself. I lead a team of product professionals within Globalization Partners, and we are very interested in analyzing the trends, especially in technology, and in looking at the challenges that organizations are facing and how we can use technology to solve these challenges and make them more effective and efficient through global hiring and creating highly functional global teams. So starting today, obviously the topic is about artificial intelligence. So I'm going to start with a phrase that could be highly controversial, because I'm going to say that not everything that we see out there in terms of technology, of clever technology, is actually artificial intelligence. In some cases, it's just, as I said, it's just clever technology, it's clever coding, good UI, excellent user interfaces, user experiences, and the clever application of science, data science in this particular case that we're going to be discussing today. So the agenda for today, I really wanted to split it into three main areas, actually 3/4. First of all, I'd like to talk about how technology is applied in learning and development programs for employees, how that actually has an impact in the area of employee retention, career progression. And the next topic is about managing performance. And I explicitly don't refer to it as performance management, because that's kind of understood as the process of setting goals, KPIs, and then doing annual or biannual evaluations. I'm actually talking about the managing of the performance itself. And finally, how to use technology to become an employer of choice. But the truth about all this is that even though I made a caveat that not all we see out there is artificial intelligence is definitely making inroads into mainstream applications, solutions, and definitely is going to have a much larger impact in the future in all areas of business. So let's start by talking about learning and development programs. So let's talk about the panorama and how it has changed for learning and development professionals in the last few years, especially since the pandemic. And the pandemic is responsible for the rapid digitalization that we saw over the last couple of years. And it has had a knock-on effect on technology investments going forward, and in some cases in business strategy. So we are saying as well on the employee side, on the professional side, that there's a need for reskilling and upskilling. In some cases because employees were made redundant, in some others because this adoption of new technology requires just to change the way things are done, processes, automation, etc. At the same time, digitalization, at the same time, organizations are evolving and becoming more dynamic. There's actually a statistic from ICD that predicted a shift from static teams to new teams that are going to be more dynamic, that are going to be focused on outcomes, and that can be reconfigured at any moment. So what I mean by this is, before we could understand our role as well-defined within boundaries, now we're seeing a lot of cross collaboration. And depending on the task, depending on the project, we know that there are going to be particular units that are going to have to require specific skills. And then once that project is done, you move on to another team and another set of skills are being used or needed. So it's important that organizations adapt for those their learning and development programs for those changing situations. And technology is there to help. And technology is actually going to help not just in the clever artificial intelligence. It's actually going to provide process automation. It's actually going to make more cost-effective processes, tasks, etc. So how does artificial intelligence help learning and development? Well, it actually plays a role, and one of the key words that I would use throughout this presentation is skills. I've already mentioned it in terms of reskilling and upskilling, but AI can actually play a central role in identifying not only the skills needed to improve productivity in the current role of the employee, but also to prepare professionals for the next role by analyzing big data sources for trends and making suggestions on learning paths for individuals. And that's going to be critical if we want to talk about highly efficient organizations. And just say each individual is unique, so are their needs for training and styles of learning. So just to give you an example, in the good old school of online learning and development, we would have a course, and it would be in our learning platform, and every single employee in that platform had to do it, had to follow it, had to answer the same questions in the same way. But that's actually missing an opportunity to create a learning path that is fulfilling the needs of the employee and the needs of the organization. So if companies can actually identify the knowledge gap of their employees and the best way to get to them, it is actually simpler and more cost-effective to train them to build up expertise. And these can definitely give organizations an advantage and keep employees engaged, because definitely employees are interested in development skills, in furthering their career and learn new things. So how can artificial intelligence deliver these learning and development programs? From my point of view, there are five key elements where technology can help organizations. First, I mentioned this one already, is understand the skill gaps. Understand the skill gaps, the current skill gaps, and the future skill gaps that are going to be needed by the employee, but also by the organization, because as I said, organizations are evolving, and it's not just in the way teams are organized, it's also the direction is accelerating change an awful lot faster than it used to. So number two, and I have already mentioned this, is learning styles. If we can understand the learning styles and we can understand the fact that some employees learn better by visual cues, by looking at videos, by doing, and this actually means in some cases interaction with the learning course, solving puzzles. And some other employees are actually more oriented towards reading materials, processing this information in their own time, and then actually joining the dots and coming to conclusions, learning. So if we actually have the technology to help us understand how each employee is actually maximizing the learning experience, we can deliver much better programs. And that actually brings me to point number 3, which is personalize the experience. As I said, you know, there's no, the strategy, the approach of one size fits all is really not going to work anymore in the future. And another key word that I'm going to be using from in this presentation is about employee experience. And part of that employee experience is how much do they perceive the organization caring for them and their learning and development. So if we can actually say, listen, we understand what the skills you need today and tomorrow, and here's a personalized program for you to learn and acquire those skills. Obviously, there's going to be a lot more engagement than in the previous forms of learning and development. And then point number 4, and here's where we actually start getting really clever about the use of artificial intelligence. And this point is about providing contextual help. And I'll give you the situation, and I'll give you what I mean by saying this. If you take 2 scenarios where you're delivering exactly the same content to your employees online, but one of them is actually, you know, is just a set of slides, and you get some reading materials and a set of FAQs, and that's it. You're left to your own devices. The other scenario is you have somebody at the other end of the screen who's actually delivering whether it be the lecture, the lesson, whatever it may be. And if at any point the employee or the student actually needs to get a second run of the same concept, but explained in a different way, the human on the other side can do it. The learning materials is not going to change. So if we can actually tweak and apply artificial intelligence to provide explanations in the same language that the user is actually providing to ask the question, there's a much better chance, a much higher chance of better understanding the concept. And here's another thing. Artificial intelligence is actually not going to give up after the first explanation. It's actually going to try again and explain it again and again and again. And that's what I mean by contextual help. And finally, you know, any kind of learning process, we are going to try to make it engaging. We're going to try to make it fun. And that's where the concept of gamification comes along. And there are different ways, and this is not a new concept, by the way, and once again, this is not artificial and user-centric experience. And when I say it's not new, I'm talking about, you know, Khan Academy came up with this idea of badges about 10 or 12 years ago. And it was all about, obviously, it was for kids to be learning and getting badges about Moon and Brock and whatever it may be. But that concept has also been extended to learning platforms. And there are some really clever uses, as I said, of user interfaces where you actually have a little tree that actually grows as you learn more, as you take more courses, and it actually makes your roots stronger, your trunk stronger, gives you better, nicer foliage, depending on the different areas of your skill set that you're actually developing. And that's part of that learning and development program. It's not necessarily artificial intelligence, but it's clever, a clever way to keep students engaged. So obviously, learning and development is a key part of employee retention and career progression, but it's not the only element. The other element for me that is really, really important is the employee experience. And you know, one of the things that I've said is that employee retention should not be based on salary and benefits anymore. We should actually turn the conversation on its head and say it's about the employee, it's about the job satisfaction, it's about behaviors. And right now, organizations are facing a really tough time because, you know, among other things, the Great Resignation that has seen hundreds of thousands of employees quit their jobs over the last couple of years. So, and we also see huge competition for talent. So retention has never been more important. It's always, you know, as we say with customers, it's always better to retain a customer, an employee, than it is to acquire and train a new one. And in this case, it's actually technology, once again, is actually going to help us. And something that we're talking about here in Globalization Partners is actually not artificial intelligence, is data science and predictive modeling. So what we're looking at is all organizations have a myriad of information about employees. And what we can do is, if you think about it, you know, we have information when we were recruiting the employee. We have information about weekly one-to-ones, employee performance. We have customer satisfaction surveys. We have exit interviews. And if we actually look at a set of all the employees that left the company and left all that trail of information about behaviors, about job satisfaction, absenteeism, we analyze those behaviors, we can start developing alerts, you know, for employees that are exhibiting certain behaviors that could lead to churn. We can issue notifications. This employee has been hasn't had a career progression conversation in the last 6 months. Do something about it. We could suggest new areas where the employee should be exploring, whether it be lateral movement, whether it be special projects, and all of that can be done through technology. So, and here's a quick statistic from a study performed by Oracle in 2021. 82% of employees believe that artificial intelligence can support their careers better than humans. And once again, I would take this with a pinch of salt. As I said, not everything that looks clever is artificial intelligence, but I definitely believe that employees think that technology can support their careers better than humans. And if you think about how important employee experience is, only have a look at this slide that we have here from McKinsey, and it's saying that employees with a positive experience have 16 times the engagement level of employees with a negative experience, and they're, guess what, they're more likely to stay in the company than those that are actually not engaged or that are actually proactively disengaged. And finally, well, actually, it's not finally, talking about performance management initiatives. And as I said, this is not about, you know, the cycle of goals, KPIs, and annual reviews. This is actually about managing the way in which organizations are actually achieving their objectives through performance of individuals. And here, the clever piece about using technology is that how can I make the most out of the talent that I have here in the organization? Well, one way to look at it is, you know, when we're in business, we create buyer personas, we create customer personas, user personas. So why not create an employee persona as well? And how we do this is that if you think about it, when we're creating a customer persona, we really don't know, or a prospect, a buyer persona, we really don't know exactly what they are, what their names are. We assign random names to them and the little picture and whatnot, but we don't really know an awful lot. We're making assumptions. Whereas if you're talking about employees personas, we have all that information here already. It's just a case of putting, as I said, clever technology. In this case, is good old data science and cluster analysis to group all my employees, all my talent into different teams or different groups that are similar somehow, whether it be because they have the same background, age, level, and tenure, experience. And therefore, where the clever application of technology is, we start fleshing out these personas. So then we can create performance indicators to measure and track satisfaction over time. I think that's a really clever application of technology. So how are we doing about time? Okay, so, and then the final piece in all of these, and perhaps in retrospect, I should have had this slide right at the beginning, because this one is about talent acquisition. So in order to become an employer of choice, it all starts with talent acquisition. And the talent marketplace has never been more competitive, and it's crucial that your company is perceived under the best possible light, that you are continuously promoting and enhancing your company's brand. From the talent acquisition perspective, there are three key objectives that are crucial. One, reduce time to recruit, reduce the cost of the process, and improve the quality of the candidates. The first two are about automation. If plainly, it's reduce the time, automation. Cost, if you're doing it faster with less resources, is more cost effective. Improving the quality of the candidates is where you actually start applying clever technology into it, going all the way to how do you actually choose candidates that are just not good on the CV, but that would actually be a good fit for your company. That's where technology can actually help you to sift through a sea of applicants and find the ones that have the right skills, that have the right potential, to meet your the needs of the team that is being recruiting that resource, and the business objectives of the organization and the future strategy of that organization. So AI can actually synthesize the combined actions and behaviors of these job seekers and give you a better and yield a better understanding of the situation and how we can actually attract that talent to the organization. So if you obviously are attracting better talent, the rest of the steps are also beginning to fall into place. And once again, as I said, there's obviously talent professionals are also happy to let technology help them make these decisions, as long as there's some sort of at the end of the day, human resources is about humans, it's about persons. So as long as we have somebody out there involved in the decisions, so that we're not leaving it to a machine, we're happy with that. So with that, I hand you back to Michael. Thank you very much for joining me tonight.
Thank you, Octavio. This is a wonderful presentation. So we are ready for questions. Audience members, you can still enter questions, and we're going to address some of the ones that came through. Our first one is...
go ahead, Michael.
Okay, so our first question is, where do you suggest companies get started with AI?
I think this is, as I said, AI is not a silver bullet for technology. The first thing I would say is you have to do a gap analysis to identify how mature is your organization. And obviously there are going to be some small organizations that are really technologically advanced and are ready to jump into some of the applications of artificial intelligence. Some others, maybe just emerging out of the digitalization phase. So the first thing I would say is you have to do an analysis of where you are in terms of maturity, and then you can decide.
Excellent. Our next question, do you have resources that will help convince management that AI is the wave of the future?
Do we have resources? I would say as with any other thing, there's always an element of, at the end of the day, is this technology going to help me achieve the business objectives? is this cost effective? How much is this going to cost me? What's the return of investment? If you can answer those questions to begin with, the rest is just about building the use cases. And the use cases could be there all along. It's just a case of identifying them, being clear in the messaging of those use cases and how it's going to benefit each one of the areas of the business. That should be a good start.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, our next question. How does your HR AI analytics tool help employees with their work-life balance?
For the work-life balance, once again, it's the technology. I mean, work-life balance it's a complicated one because it's not just about one app. It's not just a case of installing Calm in your mobile device and off you go. It's about programs. It's about a series of initiatives. Some of them could be involving technology. In some other cases, something that is happening right now with the mainstream, with the big HCM systems, is that they are acquiring companies that evaluate employee sentiment, talk about success factors, acquiring Qualtrics, for example. And it's a case of getting this feedback, continuous feedback from the employee to evaluate the wellness and the feeling, the satisfaction. And actually then you can start creating programs that are customized. Once again, it's about the individual experience, customized to the needs of to the well-being needs of the individual. So that's already happening out there. It's about getting all this data in through the likes of Qualtrics into your main system, and then doing the clever analysis, as I said before.
Excellent. Our next question, are these development programs offered in topics only within an employee's area of concentration, or can it be broader to allow for cross-functional learning?
I think definitely, of course, as I said, the organizations are evolving. They're becoming more dynamic. So I think that there's always going to be room for targeted topics, targeted areas of development. As I said, there are certain skills that need to be honed, but at the same time, there are topics like communication, and communication means different things depending on what area of the business you're working. If you're a retail worker, your communication needs and skill sets are different to those that are actually communicating with internal stakeholders in, I don't know, finance, product, etc. But at the end of the day, these communication spans across the whole organization. So there's definitely an opportunity for cross-functional learning.
Wonderful. Okay, I believe we've got time for one more question. Our next one is, what creative ways can your HR AI tool do to help companies engage with their remote workers?
That's a very good thing, because I suppose at the end of the day, the needs of the employee are going to be 90% the same in terms of engagement, are going to be 90% the same if you're remote, if you're hybrid. And we still have all these informations. We still have the engagement surveys, the employee satisfaction. It's a case of bringing it all together, analyzing it through, whether it be predictive analytics, whether it be just good old data science. And AI will then actually suggest a course of action. So if you're talking, for example, about learning and development, and you have all these informations, the learning path is still the same. It's just a case of remotely identifying what's going to work best for the employee and making suggestions in terms of this course is going to be delivered to you through interaction, through puzzle solving. And you can do it from your computer. You can do it from your stand-up desk at home. Bringing engagement together, there are collaboration platforms. They are, social platforms. And I'm talking about Facebook. I'm talking about kind of like community engagement platforms that can integrate with the different tools that I'm talking about. And that's one way to keep remote workers engaged.
Thank you, Octavio. Well, we're out of time for this session. This was a wonderful session. I just want to thank you for being here. I also want to thank everyone for joining us today for this fantastic thought leadership. This session, along with all of today's content, will be available on demand following the event. Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Octavio.